Good morning, everybody. So a lot of people have been asking what the Conservative Party of Canada stands for. So we're going to go and look at the actual Conservative Party of Canada policy declaration. I've printed this off. It's about 50 pages. Anybody can get to it. Google Conservative Party of Canada policy declaration. You can actually go to their website and find it. So this is not a doctored piece of paper. This is actually their legit policy declaration. So what I've done is I've gone through pretty much the whole thing and highlighted some issues that I think people need to pay a little bit closer attention to. Some of them might be nothing, but some of them might be something. I'm looking for tips and tricks from anybody that understands these kinds of things to jump in with their comments, help me out with some of the education part. I don't know everything about everything. I don't know everything about international law. I don't know everything about immigration policies. I do know that this is what's being stated in this document. So once I read you the information, I would welcome any input from anybody that is more educated than I am on this issue. But I believe that these are things that need to be looked at in general. So the first thing I notice under government duplication and waste, a Conservative government will undertake regular reviews of all government spending programs and terminate those programs whose objectives are no longer valid or have already been met or whose objectives are not consistent with the objectives of government. So what does that mean? Sometimes when you make a policy, it's all for good reasons. But you have to be aware that when you make that policy, you can leave the back door open for negative things to happen as well if you're not careful in your wording. So what this is saying is that the Conservative government at any time can choose to eliminate services that do not align with their objectives. Now, does that mean they're going to do it? I don't know. But can they? Yes. And it's saying this in their policy declaration. On issues of moral conscience, such as abortion, the definition of marriage, and euthanasia, the Conservative Party acknowledges the diversity of deeply held personal convictions among individual party members and the right of members of Parliament to adopt positions in consultation with their constituents and to vote freely. So what does that mean, voting freely? Let's look at that a little closer. So normally when a parliament brings a bill forward to be voted on, most parties basically promote that their MPs follow the party's stance on that vote. In certain circumstances, people have moral obligations or belief systems that don't necessarily agree with the party. And in that case, the party asks them to just simply abstain from the vote. What's happening in the Conservative Party is that they are actually saying that they reserve the right to allow their members to make votes based on their personal ideologies and that they are not to be conflicted with, whether or not they agree with what the party is proposing. So what that means is the Conservative Party may never table a bill about changing the rules on abortion or the definition of marriage or euthanasia. But that doesn't mean if one of their members brings it up that the Conservatives are not free to vote individually on how they feel about that policy. So let's just keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, the next point I would like to make is that the Conservative Party believes that Parliament, rather than the courts, is the law-making body of Canada. That's not right. The courts are the ones that make the decisions, and Parliament is to follow what the courts say. If you make the Conservative Parliament the law-making body of Canada, that means the Conservative Party can just make whatever rules it wants and everybody else is supposed to follow that? I'm not sure how I feel about that. The next page comes to protecting free speech on Canadian campuses. Conservative Party of Canada will incentivize federal funding to Canadian universities that have implemented Chicago principles. Failure to protect free expression would result in losing federal funding. The government will restore merit in Canada's innovation by directing hiring practices associated with federal research funding away from ideology and instead emphasizing first and foremost supporting and retaining Canada's research talent irrespective of personal immutable characteristics. The Conservative Party does not support forced political, cultural, or ideological training in any kind as a precondition of employment or practice. Those employed in the public sector, unions, or self-regulated trades or professions should not be forced to make affirmations or participate in ideological programs as a condition of employment or practice. So what does that mean? That's basically the Conservative Party's target on DEI initiatives. They're basically saying that when you work for a government entity or a private entity and they want to do a class like at my job where they did a training course on the Aboriginal people of Canada and how we're on their land and how we should respect their rights. We also do training on sexual harassment. We do training on inclusion, treating other people fairly. That basically would put a kibosh to all of it. It's basically saying that they will not hold people accountable for that. Let's look at the taxes for corporations. We encourage the government to continue the process of reducing business taxes. Reducing business taxes encourages both foreign and domestic businesses to invest in Canada, meaning more and better jobs for Canadian workers. Lower business taxes mean more jobs as well as greater returns for pension plan members and those who own RSPs, mutual funds, and common shares. We encourage the Conservative Party to move to a less progressive tax system by reducing the number of personal income tax brackets. So basically, they want to give tax cuts to private businesses to encourage growth in the Canadian economy, but they want to reduce any kind of social services. We believe that there should be no federally imposed carbon taxes or cap and trade systems on either the provinces and territories or on the citizens of Canada. Provinces and territories should be free to develop their own climate change policies without federal interference or federal penalties or incentives. I thought the land belonged to Canada. If the land belongs to Canada, it belongs to all of us. It belongs to the Indigenous. It belongs to immigrants. It belongs to natural-born Canadians. It belongs to all of us. So why should the provinces be the one to make decisions on whether or not our resources are being cared for properly? I don't think that's right. So here's the part that I find strange. We support the creation of an independent chief scientist who would advise and report to Parliament on scientific matters. The chief scientist would be mandated by Parliament to provide independent and balanced analysis on public policy issues related to science and technology. So when you look at that, they're basically saying that as a party, they want to choose someone who is their minister of science. They want to choose someone who is their expert. I'm thinking RFK, but I digress. So now we look at the section called environmental principles. So they're saying a conservative government will protect through policies clean air and climate, clean water and land, and biodiversity. That all sounds great. These policies will be firmly based on the best scientific and technological information currently available concerning both the issues involved and our best response to them. So whoever they assign to be the head of science will be the one that determines the best response to environmental issues. So, what? Look at what they are fighting for. The Conservative Party believes the government should promote exploration and development of offshore resources along all our coastal waters. We believe government should consider the potential of these natural resources before designating new marine protected areas. We also believe the government should continue to remove roadblocks that discourage the private sector from cleaning and developing contaminated land. Amend the Income Tax Act to allow remediation expenses to be treated as a deductible expense. So the big polluters got caught polluting. They've polluted and ruined everything. The oil and gas industry has left numerous shafts wide open in Alberta. And instead of enforcing these companies to clean up their mess, they're asking the government to give them tax incentives to make it cheaper for them to clean up their own mess. Do you see where this is going? Follow along for part 2.